In the darkest worlds that ever were, the only thing that brings light are stories. Those stories are kept in one place, the tiny bookcase. Hello, explorers of the Sacred Library. I'm Nico.
I'm Ben, and you're listening to The Tiny Bookcase, and it's time for another guest.
We are joined today by a writer who claims to not be 12 squirrels in a raincoat.
His fantasy steampunk series, The Sins of the Elders, is out now and aching to be read. We'd like to welcome Andrew Slinde.
Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Nico. How's it going, guys?
I think we're fabulous. I speak for Ben on this.
I'm not sure I'd go as far as fabulous. Actually, that's there's some implications on that one.
That's precisely how I would describe you.
Wait, how long have you been doing this? Going around telling people I'm fabulous?
At least once a day. Someone I've never met before.
That's why I was so lonely at university.
Speaking of people I've never met before, Andrew, how are you? How is everything on your side of the world at the moment?
Well, it's a bit of a mess with this whole pandemic situation, but I do tell you, I did get my second dose of the vaccine back on it was last Friday actually. It knocked me out for a good few days, but I'm finally feeling better. So,
which vaccine team did you land in?
I ended up with the Pfizer.
Hey, Team Pfizer over here. I'm loving it.
You both
Nice.
Pfizer.
Both Pfizers.
I am unfortunately as yet unpricked with vaccination needles. I am slightly too young for the current crop of.
Easy. Don't let people know I'm old.
Well, see, actually, here in Iowa, in the U.S., we actually opened it up to everyone because so few Iowans are getting vaccinated.
Crikey.
Oh wow!
So they've just got like, we've got a shitload of vaccine and nobody to put it in.
Mm-hmm. Exactly what's happening. Yep.
Whoa.
Yep.
Damn, it sounds like I should come to Iowa.
Yeah. How much are plane tickets? Let's get you out there, Ben. Get you vaccinated.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
We touched ever so gently on it before we started recording, but you have an absolutely fantastic surname in Slinde.
Well, thank you.
So you mentioned that it was Norwegian.
Mhm.
Is your family from Norway?
Originally, yes. The Slinde side of the family did come from Norway. There's actually a small fishing village in Norway called Slinde, so that's where we guess that's where we derived our name.
So, like, how far back are we talking? Like, are we talking like some serious Viking going on
70s.
here? Or is this 70s? Yeah.
Well, as far as I can trace back, the first Slindes came over from Norway in about the 1890s and started farming in North Dakota.
Bringing those Norwegian farming techniques to North Dakota. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Do you have you ever been influenced in your writing by any sort of touch upon your Norwegian heritage?
Well, there is a bit of Norwegian and Scandinavian in one or two of the cultures that I deal with. I did borrow a little bit from each of the from the Scandinavian heritage. I did borrow to kind of supplement some of the cultures in my world.
That's pretty cool.
Just going to assure you, Ben is not accusing you of climbing aboard your longboat and pillaging anyone else's work. That's...
Oh no, not yet anyway.
A literary Viking, I love it. Right, let's have some stories. Nico, you've got the dubious honor of going first this week, and the prompt is time stopped.
Time stopped. I remember the first time that I met Tiago so unbelievably clearly. Mostly, I suppose, because it was absolutely bloody traumatizing in the way that only the experiences of a teenager can be. I was trying to get onto the school rugby team in this vain attempt to prove to my dad that I could do boy things. He didn't put pressure on me for that sort of thing, but I had this gnawing feeling like he was always just a bit disappointed that I didn't like cars or football. So I figured, hey, I'm tall, rugby players are tall, I can do rugby. Rugby players are meant to be wide, too, which I must have missed out on the gene for. Mum called me a beanpole, which I think is kind of cute, because beans are fine and generally inoffensive. Anyway, I get thrown the weird ball, which isn't even a ball, is it? The thing isn't round. And next thing I know, I'm just on the ground with a bunch of bejumped madmen piling all over me. So I do the natural thing and roll up like a hedgehog. And then there he was. A voice filled with mirth and warmth and promise. Hey, nice try. Maybe look up instead of at the ball. I see a hand first, offered as kind assistance, and then I follow it up the tan arm, and time just stops. I knew I was gay before then, but I'd never met a boy who gave me butterflies. He gave me an entire colony of the damn things. It wasn't that he was perfectly gorgeous or anything, although I think he is. His nose was crooked and his eyebrows were crazy thick, and he was trying to cultivate some kind of beard out of the dappling of peach fuzz on his face, but it was the honesty in his eyes. The way he offered advice without mocking. It was him. Just all of him. And that long moment was forever and over in an instant. And I was just gawping. So I took his hand and he held me up like I was made of paper. And then he ran off to be a rugby boy again. I didn't, spoiler alert, make the rugby team. I did, however, develop quite the interest in rugby and start helping out. Which they were grateful for, actually. It turns out not a whole bunch of people are willing to organise buses and sort out bottles of Lucozade from the big Tesco in town. Which, Mum, I am still eternally grateful for. So we got to know each other a bit, Tiago and I. He was really into rugger, as he always called it. He used to joke that it was why his family moved over from Portugal, just for the rugby. He loved lemon drizzle cake, and movies with dinosaurs in. Even, or maybe especially, the terrible ones where the dinosaurs are rubbery and flop around too much. I've seen so many of those now. I remember the first time we kissed, clearly, too. I was a huge wimp, and honestly, didn't think he'd want to kiss me, ever. I mean, I didn't even know if he was gay, but we were away for the final game of the college year, and we were playing against some really posh school, and we won. I mean, really trounced them. And it meant that we won the season. So we're all screaming and jumping, and I have no idea what happened, but he was there. And before I could blink, time had stopped again. His lips were against mine, and he was covered in mud, and one of his lips was puffy from a really ugly tackle early in the game, and he was covered in so many people's sweat, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It was perfect. And I felt eternity stretch through that kiss. And then it was over. And he was looking at me, and rugby didn't matter, and I was dangerously aware of how bloody lanky I am, and why would he kiss me? It must be just excitement, and he was going to regret it, and you want me to not kiss you again. I'm sorry, I should have asked. And that was it. I didn't have words for that, because what could I possibly say? Are you mental, Tiago? I've been thinking about you 90% of the time for the last year and a bit since we met, and I want to eat you like a bowl of spag bol. So I just kissed him. Again. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the coach ride home, but it turns out, yes, Tiago is definitely gay, and hadn't been sure if I was, and we'd just been spinning around each other like a pair of idiots for a year. Time stopped a lot for me after that. It was like my little ally. My perception of time stretching to the point of near breaking as we became secret lovers, and then boyfriends, and then something more than that. I guess partners? There isn't a word for it, as far as I know, but it wasn't frivolous. The follies of youth, these ain't. Mum loved him because he's so exotic, which made me cringe. Like, is that racist somehow? I don't think my mum's negative like that at all, but maybe just a bit old-fashioned. Dad, and this surprised me, shouldn't have, absolutely adored him. I had this fear that coming out to my dad was going to be terrifying. Lamps would fly, and someone would be slamming a door with a packed suitcase. My dad, he just asked who the lucky guy was. I mean, I'm pretty sure Mum prepped him for the conversation, though he maintains that he always knew. Anyway, Tiago came, and he knew about football, and cars, and some weird stuff about stocks that made my dad give me a look that said, I like this lad. And time, as it always did when I needed it, stopped. And I felt my father's acceptance and love, and my mum's warm glow, and my partner's wide, honest heart pouring into a room of people he wasn't trying to impress. He was just giving himself to. And I felt bliss. 6 years. We'd been together for 6 years. Both graduated sports science for Tiago, and I had somehow shuffled my way through a biochemistry degree, which I have to tell you does not blow the job market wide open. We were going on a driving holiday to Wales, which had all started because we played this stupid game. So you go on your map app and you just spin your fingers around and then zoom all the way in, and you have to read the town name in whatever language it's in. And you end up doing a silly voice or whatever. I don't know, we liked it. So Welsh place names just do not translate into Portuguese. Llandudno was the one that really tipped us over, and it became this running joke for years where we'd just say Llandudno to each other with insane emphasis. So we decided to go. And time betrayed me on that journey. I should have guessed that it wasn't going to be my friend forever, but I let myself, like an idiot, imagine I'd be happy for the rest of my days. Apparently, the guy, whoever it was, had dropped some kind of sausage roll into his footwell and decided that 70-odd miles an hour was a great speed to reach your whole body down to get a goddamn pastry. It's all so fast. So fast I can barely remember it, but there was suddenly too much light. And it's weird, but I couldn't put the pieces together fast enough. And Tiago was screaming at me, "Baby, hold on. It's going to be okay." And I saw so much fear on his face. I'd never seen it there before. He was never afraid of anything. And it all clicked, and I could see the car coming at us, and we were trying to stop, but there was nowhere for us to go. Walled in. We were walled in, and I begged time to stop. I grabbed his hand and I willed that moment of slow concentration to come so a miracle could happen, but it didn't. And time doesn't stop anymore. In fact, I think it's the only thing still going. Ticking inexorably along, taking me further away from him. Everything else stopped, except it. The whole world died with him. And I just wish I could look into that honest, beautiful man one last time and have time stop like it used to.
What a wholesome tale for us.
God damn.
Just a really nice boy. I really liked it.
He was a
Uh-huh.
nice boy. A pair of nice boys.
Just a pair of nice boys having a nice time until they were snatched away. Oh, what a shame.
Cruel trick, I'm afraid.
Yeah. I felt like you drilled into the sort of the love of their relationship really nicely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was so intimate and so sweet that, I mean, it knocked out of the park just about any relationship I've seen in writing yet. So,
Oh,
well
wow.
done, sir. Well done.
That's ringing praise. Love
That's some big words.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
Oh, man.
Speaking about big words, I really enjoyed the use of bejumped.
I think that's the most me thing in there, isn't it?
Bejumped.
Be jumpered.
It was both really challenging and really easy to write. A relationship like that. I think there's a really bad habit when people write gay couples of making them as gay as possible. Like every day is a pride parade and everyone has to be effeminate, and I know a lot of gay people and a lot of them aren't like that.
Yeah, the way that you were the main character was just sort of like worrying about going to get some Lucozade and this kind of thing. Like they felt very real as a person, which is like the in joke of the Welsh town name. Sorry, I missed actually how to say it properly, but
It's Llandid now.
Llandid now.
Yeah. It starts with 2 L's and gets worse. That's
and also as a turn of phrase, the idea of boy butterflies. Like the idea of, like, you know, that classic of getting butterflies in your stomach, but getting boy butterfly. I thought it was nice. Just the whole thing was just it was very, very well done and very nice in a sort of, like, it made me feel happy and content that they were having a nice time. And then being that walled in, I imagined it very strongly to be on like a motorway between, you know, like basically like trucks and stuff. Like it felt like I could feel it in my head and senses.
It was based on an actual road, and I couldn't tell you what the road is called, but it was on a drive to Wales, and it's around the side of a mountain, and one side is all mountain, and the other side is a perilous drop into the abyss.
Oh, man.
And on the whole time on that road, I thought, this is a kill box. This is where you go to die. This is a horrible place. And yeah, as I was writing the story, I thought, oh no, that's where this is heading towards, isn't it?
Those roads are just I can't handle them, man. Like
I cannot imagine you up somewhere like that.
No, well, I think I went to the Isle of Skye when I was a kid, and there's a bunch of roads like that up there, that do just straight up kill people every year. And then more recently, I was on one in Italy, in the Abruzzo region, which is very rural. And we went around the side of a mountain, like along on the road around the side of the mountain as you described, except the section of road that we were on, like the side of the road that we were on, had just sloughed off.
Oh no!
It just wasn't there.
Oh,
And
no!
It was around a dead, a blind corner, and they hadn't put any signs up before the corner. They just put some cones around the missing section of road.
Oh, fucking hell!
So in order to like get through it, you had to quickly swerve onto the oncoming lane, and get around this just like maybe like 20 feet of road had just fallen off the side of a mountain.
You know what? You're right.
Just like, yeah, I just couldn't believe it. Like I was like, I actually couldn't believe we survived it.
Yeah.
It felt like an assassination attempt.
It sounds like an assassination attempt.
I mean, it's how I'd get you.
And I thought the roads in Iowa were bad. Shit.
Oh, well, that was a really nice story, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually,
thank you for the praise. Good grief, Andrew.
Not to get on the soapbox or anything, but I mean, a large part of the diaspora right now is talking about normalizing gay relationships and representation being important and all that. And you hear about people talk about how these cishet people can't really relate to the gay relationships that we see in fiction, but I find a lot of that to be so untrue because the experience you talked about with your main character and Tiago, um, a lot of that is how I felt when I was younger and I'd meet a girl, So it's not it's sort of universal human experience more so than, is this strictly hetero? Is this strictly gay? And I just feel like you made a lot of that relatable to more than just people who are gay. It's like, I mean, just about anybody can relate to that experience with someone at some point. And I found that just very well done.
Crikey, thank you.
In fact, that's going to be a hard act to follow.
Well,
speaking of,
we are ready for you.
All right, let's do this. This is called 3:02 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice message system. 515-555-0123 is not available. Please leave your message after the tone. It was a rare moment of lucidity, and, as near as he could tell, they were becoming fewer and further between. Of course, when the clock on your computer screen, or cell phone, or the clock on the wall always reads 3:02 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, it was almost impossible to determine the spans between sanity anymore. He clicked the voicemail button on his computer screen and waited for the next call. That sinking feeling crept into his guts again. He knew the next call was never going to come. In the days before this strange and torturous period in which the clock only read 3:02 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, he'd have done almost anything to just sit there all afternoon and click the voicemail button. When your job involved working for minimum wage plus a paltry commission on each sale, it was really hard to care, especially when you were slinging cable services for a guy who just bought his second soccer team. Not to mention the hostility of the customers in the afternoons. No one likes a telemarketer. He shook his head to try to clear it. In a situation like this, during a period when he was lucid, there was no time to waste. He had to think. How was it possible? Or rather, how could it ever be possible that time had stopped? Not only did the clocks all share the same numerals, but events kept repeating as well. That voicemail he kept getting always had the same phone number. The girl who sat 3 desks down from him kept getting up to grab an energy drink from the break room. Since the act took more than a minute, it kept him in constant suspense over whether she'd ever gotten her afternoon pick-me-up. His boss always called over another coworker, who was notorious for his lack of personal space. Apparently his name was Kevin. Wait, apparently? Had he somehow forgotten these people had names? According to the cheap little plastic plaque on his desk, he'd been working for the company for 12 years. Surely in some life that existed outside of 3:02 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, he'd known these people's names, their hobbies. Maybe he'd even been attracted to the girl who had a serious Red Bull addiction. He was getting off topic again. All right, 3:02 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. It couldn't be possible that he'd spent days, or maybe weeks or years, stuck at 3:02 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. There was such a thing as physics. The Earth spun at a rate of 60 seconds per minute. Time was a constant. It just simply wasn't possible that all of a sudden, for no reason at all, time would suddenly stop at 3:02 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he was burned out. There'd been other afternoons that seemed like time had stopped. There were mundane Mondays, when the day simply dragged and 5 minutes felt like an hour. There were Friday evenings, when he couldn't keep his eyes off that clock, just waiting for it to strike 8 p.m. so he could pack up and go home. Home. Did he have a home anymore? He seemed to remember that there was something waiting for him. Someone who existed outside of 3:02 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. There was a photo on his desk of himself and a woman, smiling, happy. He didn't know her name anymore either. Stop. He was getting off topic again. Okay, was it possible? Was this something that was happening objectively, or was it just a hiccup in his perception? Was the madness that took him during the time stop only an illusion? He moved the cursor away from the voicemail button on the dialer's interface, mousing over the clock in the bottom right-hand corner of his screen. He clicked on it, relieved to see that the clock was ticking. 3:02:48. Relieved, he took a deep breath. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe time hadn't completely stopped, and he wasn't being forced to repeat the same minute over and over again. 3:02:56. Okay, 4 seconds left. Only 4 seconds until the clock ticked over and freed him into 3:03 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. A time when things were okay again, when he had a life again. 3:02:59. He dry swallowed his anticipation, sure that time stopping was impossible. A cold sweat broke over him as the last second ticked. 3:02:00. Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. 515-555-0123 is not available. Please leave your message after the tone.
What an exceptionally well worked through and explored idea. Like you got so much out of a minute of narrative time. I full on enjoyed that. I had a really good time thinking about it as you were telling the story.
Well, thank you.
That elicited an unreal amount of anxiety in me.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah. I was horrified when I wrote it. And actually, let me tell you what, that's loosely based on a true story. See, I worked in telemarketing for 12 years.
Yeah.
Right.
So there were afternoons where it felt like the same minute of time was repeating over and over again. And I just wanted to collect that and take it one step further.
I liked how because I think everyone could, in the same way that we in the previous story we could all identify with the relationship that was being told. I think most people listening to this, I know I do. I've had a shit job. I've had a situation where I felt like time had fucking stopped.
Oh, God.
And yeah, so but it was very cool that you addressed that in the story. You were like, everyone's felt this, but this isn't that. This is something far worse. And this idea of having like names losing their meaning and being conscious that you have lucid periods during this endless eon of 2 minutes past 3 on a Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, that loads of anxiety and actual existential horror, I would say.
You're a very intelligent man, Ben. You might know. Is there a science behind this kind of freaky perception of time that I know we all experience? We've all done that thing where you look at the clock and you say, "Oh, it's 2 minutes past 3," and then you do an hour's worth of work and it's 9 minutes past 3. But in that same way, your lunch break happens. You take the first bite out of your sandwich, and you've had 55 minutes of your lunch break.
Yeah. I've got no idea. Like, I think, in fact, I've spent quite a lot of time when time is passing slowly, wondering why it's passing so slowly. I'm sure we've all done that a bit, but I can only assume it's got something to do with like some kind of like primal instinct, like when we're doing something that needs to be done and is meaningful. So, for example, killing something to eat it or chasing it down, something like that. I'm sure that like time just passes fast because we don't need any kind of perception of time.
Yeah.
Whereas when nothing is happening for a human, in a situation they shouldn't be in, which is telemarketing jobs, retail, like this kind of unnatural state that we find that most of modern people find themselves in the majority of time in their adult life. That we're painfully aware of it, and just everything that we're sort of prepared to do on a biological level isn't happening.
It's just turned off.
Yeah, it's just like, what is this?
I have to say, I really liked that. We're talking. Ben had mentioned previously about the names losing meaning, and this. You had the guy who may have been Kevin, who he now could only identify him by his inability to maintain decent space from a co-worker because he was just watching him do that over and over again. Or the girl who was addicted to energy drinks, that's all she was boiled down to because that was the only portion of her life left. It really took me to that workspace experience where even the people you're friends with, you don't truly know them. They're not the same people that you're, or they may be for some people, but they're not the same people that you call on your walk home on a Friday night to find out what's happening for the weekend. And they are just boiled down into little microcosms of workspace personality. And it sold the story really well for me because that whole office drudgery experience had been hyper intensified into one unbearable minute that he had to do forever, which is every working man's greatest fear.
I think that's the thing that's really well expressed. Like it was sort of like out of context, in context behavior.
Yeah.
Because that woman appears to be addicted to energy drinks because she gets up in that minute. That guy appears to be a bit lechy because of what's happening inside that minute. And because he's lost, as you say, like lost names, lost concepts of their identity outside of the context of that 1 minute. It's just, they take on a whole new identity, which is really easy to like sort of dismiss as 2D and become faceless. Yeah, I thought that was, as I said at the start, like I think this does boil down to us saying that was a really well realized story, Andrew.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And very well written. Like it was very engaging.
Well, Ben, you've got a trifecta to complete, my friend.
I fucking hate going last.
Joe, I'm gonna give everyone a peek behind the curtain here. Ben crafted the intro for this one, so he could have gone first if he'd wanted. So he's only got himself to blame.
That is not true, and you know it.
No, this is why we alternate because no one wants to go last.
No, I'm more like I hate qualifying what I'm about to read out, but like I'm aware that I've written a few sad things recently, and I just want to reassure people listening that I am okay.
That's probably a good disclaimer. Yeah, probably a good disclaimer.
We'll put that right at the beginning.
Right, okay. Let's give this a go then.
Beep, beep, bingle, beep.
We're just barging in a moment to tell you about something cool.
200,000 book titles are published every year in the UK. Just 17% of these are lucky enough to get a decent marketing budget and make it to the bestsellers list. Among the other 83% are many amazing books and authors that remain undiscovered. Shockingly, it's estimated that 70 million of these books are destroyed each year in the UK alone.
A Box of Stories wants to change that. By scanning thousands of titles and using real reader recommendations, their algorithm saves these brilliant books from being lost forever by curating a box of 4 surprise books. You could even pick the genre of the box, like historical fiction or crime.
Discovering new work has never been easier or more exciting, and A Box of Stories has saved more than 100,000 books already. To receive £4 off of your first box, use the code TINY when you check out at www.aboxofstories.com. That's TINY, all in lowercase, at www.aboxofstories.com.
Now let's get back to our stories.
Beep, Bengal, beep, beep.
Time stopped. Morris went for a walk with the letter. His wife used to laugh at the habit, saying he was one step from taking the envelopes out for dinner and a movie. He'd never minded Kate's laughter. Hearing her happy had never worried him. Morris hadn't been allowed to visit her in her last year. He had never liked to cause a fuss for himself, But for her, it was another matter. That had led to Morris being physically removed from the care home lobby by put-upon attendants and, on one occasion, some coppers. Though he was deeper into his 80s than he'd care to admit, Morris had boxed a little and been deployed during the Troubles. As such, he'd given them a surprising time. They'd fined him and let him go home, but only because of Robert. Robert was where the days started and ended for Morris now. He was grandfather, grandmother, father, and mother to the kid. Morris knew he'd made a hash of it the first time he'd tried to be a parent, so he'd bought books on how to do it properly. And he liked to think that he'd done a good job so far, even without Kate. When they'd sent all the kids home during the pandemic, he'd helped the lad with his lessons. He'd even bought him a new computer so that he could join what the teachers had called a virtual learning environment. He'd waited around to watch the lad go to the lessons the first few times, but seeing that it was working, he decided he could use the time for a walk. Morris always varied the route of his walks. He'd taken the letters Kate had written him over the wreck and up past the church, thinking about how to reply. He'd taken his discharge papers down the canal towpath, pondering what his time in uniform had meant to him. With this letter, he'd decided on the country park to be sure he was back inside an hour to see Robert was set up for his next virtual lesson. Morris stepped along the well-cut paths which wound through old woodlands, thinking to himself that perhaps a king had hunted game in these trees long ago. He opened the letter as he walked, and he saw the double creases in the yellowing paper had lost their crispness and developed into deep furrows from repeated misaligned folds. The words on the paper, used so clinically, smashed him like an unguarded right cross. The alarm of it incited panic in the pathways of his mind as he rushed from the information to the consequences of it. The letter meant he had to try and hold on for as long as he could, or the boy would go into care. Care. Like they'd cared for him before the army. Like they'd cared for Kate at the end. What a bloody stupid word, to make the horrible lack of it all the more apparent. Morris arrived at her wooden bench to find it was occupied. The young man who sat on it had one leg folded over the other and was checking his watch. Morris never minded other people in his walks, but he hoped the man wasn't a chit-chatterer. "Hello," said Morris. "Mind if I join you? Knees aren't what they were." "I'd like that." The young man gave Morris a welcoming smile and scooted up to the edge of the bench to give him space to sit. "I suppose we should have masks on or something." Morris had quickly gotten over the annoyance of wearing them so that he could go to the shops for Robert. "No need, I'm all vaxxed up." "Ah, that's good. What brings you here then?" "Oh, just passing time." "What's that?" asked the stranger. Morris realised he was still holding the letter. "Bad news," said Morris. "The kind that needs a walk to sort." The young man smiled as he spoke. "The kind that is degenerative and neural." "I'm very sorry to hear that." "If it was just me, I wouldn't mind so much, but there's my grandson. I thought I'd come and see my wife, and she would have had some words." "Your wife's Kate?" The young man indicated to the small brass plaque that was screwed into the aging wood of the bench. Morris nodded. "We scattered her here." He looked out over the small lake. Half-submerged fishing platforms jutted out along its edge. Morris always thought they were strange, as he'd never seen anyone using them. She'd loved it here, though. "I just need to hang on until he's a bit older if I can. Then he'll be all right. I'm sure he's going to be fine, especially if he's got you." For Morris, time stopped. He looked down at the letter. He saw that the double creases in the yellowing paper had lost their crispness and developed into deep furrows from repeated misaligned folds. The words on the paper, used so clinically, smashed him like an unguarded right cross. "Some bad news?" The tone of the voice was caring, and Morris looked up to see a young man smiling at him. The man reminded him of someone he couldn't recall. "Aye, the kind that needs a walk to sort," Morris replied.
"You absolute bastard." How could you? Oh, it's phenomenal.
One of my shorter ones that came in at about 80 over the minimum.
It was enough. Genuinely, just so beautifully put together.
Oh yeah,
That's really
yeah.
kind. Thank you.
And you really nailed it with the grief there and the uncertainty and the regret. It was wow.
Yes.
Oh.
As I said at the start, I'm okay.
So,
but yeah, go on. Sorry.
am I reading too far in, or is the young man on the bench his grandson?
The young man on the bench is Robert. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, not good, but it just makes it hurt all the more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What a horrible time to be stuck in as well. A time as dark as the pandemic.
Yeah, I think Alzheimer's takes no prisoners. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty horrible. I mean, I assume I know at the start of the pandy that people were saying, "Oh, everyone's going to be writing a book about everyone's going to be writing about this," and
Yeah.
it sort of haven't seen too much of it about. There's probably been a bit of it, but I thought it was interesting in this particular scenario to use the pandemic to age the piece.
Yeah.
Because obviously the story isn't actually happening at the time that the main character thinks that it's happening.
Yeah.
So I sort of thought it might be a little bit more sort of time bulletproof. But you never know. It might just have absolutely no meaning to people when the world ends in like 5 years.
No, it's a good frame. It works as a really good framing device because it encapsulates that moment in time, and it's a very easy thing to anchor to because we are all going through it, and in some time we will have all gone through it. So it does mean you can, like, there are brilliant context clues in there, like this man who is described as a young man saying, "Oh, I'm all vaxxed up," which means it's at least ahead of where we are now.
Yep.
And yeah, just it. I know you say it's always very short, but it felt very carefully constructed. And I'm sure if I heard it again, which I am very lucky to be able to say I will, and any of you listening at home can, it's a simple movement of the thumb. That I would find.
That's.
So, don't. I'm being nice. Don't turn it into. God, we watch 50 Shades for one Patreon video, and you guys. Come on. Yeah, if you want to hear that experience, guys, jump onto the Patreon. Good grief!
It was.
That is.
I borderline think it's not interesting content because that movie's so fucking bad. Like.
Anyway, we were talking about your story.
Head over to the Patreon, guys.
Yeah, you could listen to us being not even disgusted, but in the wrong way. I think not what people would want.
Not in the fun way.
No.
Anyway, sorry, you were saying something.
Yes,
nice.
I was saying something kind, and it's a rare opportunity. You should enjoy it. I'm sure if I went back, there would be so many little things I could have grabbed onto. Because you're like that, you sneaky git. There, see, this is what I normally do, Andrew. I'll turn it around at the end.
Yeah, just turns it around. He just spends the whole episode negging me.
I told you, if you don't like what I'm saying a bit, you say yellow. And if you want to stop me, you say red.
Yes, there's not much fat on that story. Even so, like, I almost find, I don't know if you guys find this, but when I cut something so close to the bone as this, that I actually start looking at, for example, the dialogue and thinking, why are they even saying this?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But you can edit yourself into oblivion, so.
Oh, yes. Yes.
There's a very, very powerful ad campaign going on in the UK at the moment. And I don't watch TV, apart from on streaming services, like many people of our age now.
Yeah.
But I got to go to the cinema recently for the first time in bloody yonks.
Oh, wow.
Ironically, to watch a live taping of the last gig that I went to before the lockdown. So that was an interesting throwback.
Very strange.
Yeah, well, the things we do
really fits into the theme of the episode too, with time stopped, because
That's true.
Yeah.
But there's this this Alzheimer's charity ad campaign. I think it might be for Mind. I'm not sure, but it just completely destroyed me. And we've spoken before on the podcast about how I'm at the stage where even vaguely sad adverts now just fuck me up. But it's the whole idea of the campaign is, without proper care, Alzheimer's destroys 2 lives. And the whole ad is this woman trying to look after her husband, who is struggling with his day-to-day life because he can't function fully anymore. And it's the most harrowing sort of 70 seconds that I can imagine. It really messed me up. And I've been to the cinema to see sad films and had less of a reaction than I did to this ad campaign. And I think it's a very real thing. And I mean, I talk about this with the band a lot, so I don't mind saying it here. My mum's had brain cancer, and it's caused issues with her. I mean, you know this, Ben, but it's caused issues with her short-term memory creation, and it can have effect on her personality some days. And so things like that, things like Alzheimer's, it just completely fucks me up, because
that just hits you right where home is. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure Ben didn't do that maliciously, because he wouldn't do that, would you, Ben?
I took my gloves off and just slipping on a knuckle duster, an emotional knuckle duster.
Speaking of emotional knuckle dusters, let's ask some deep and personal questions to Andrew.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
I like that you say that, but then the first question is, what are you reading at the moment?
When you're alone at night in the dark.
And the walls of your bower appear to be closing in.
The telltale heart beats in the cellar.
And we are off the rails on this one. I like it. What are you reading at the moment?
I am actually reading the Parasol Protectorate series by Gail Carriger.
I've not encountered this. What's this? The Parasol Protector series sounds really fun.
It is it's kind of a like steampunk urban fantasy.
Okay.
It's vampires, werewolves, and the main character is what they call a preternatural, or a soulless. And the whole idea in the mythology of the world is that people who become supernatural beings, vampires, werewolves, etc., have an excess of soul, and the soulless work to kind of cancel that out. And the whole thing is, it's very, like I said, it's very urban fantasy, very steampunk, with the airships, the clockwork technology, steam engines and all of that. And it actually occurred to me right before I started reading this that although I write steampunk, I've read fuck all in the actual genre.
I was just
so
you should. That was something that was common for you to read a lot of steampunk.
Actually, it isn't. So it's kind of embarrassing to me that I write steampunk, but I've never actually read much of it. I did try. Oh, it wasn't Dreadnought by Sherry Priest, which is one of the huge steampunky ones. It was a different novel of hers. Really had a hard time getting into it. So it's kind of nice to actually delve into pretty deeply into the same genre that I'm supposed to be writing in. So
For the episode that we had this season called it was the prompt, The Palm Reader, with David Wellington, I actually did write some steampunk, and I had a very similar revelation. Like, obviously I haven't published 2 steampunk books like you have, or fantasy steampunk anyway, but but I realized that I barely I was so aware of the genre because it's just everywhere, but I
Hmm.
hadn't actually read anything properly, like beyond a couple of short stories perhaps. So I had a very strange experience writing steampunk. But so so during your writing process for your books, did you find that there were like gaps in how you wanted to present the world, or did it actually help you because it meant that you could just do whatever you wanted with the aesthetic?
Actually, surprisingly, I didn't have a whole lot of difficulty um, with that because I haven't necessarily been exposed to a lot of like readable narrative fiction that dealt with the steampunk world, but I have been immersed in other forms of media, video games, some film and TV that portrayed the whole steampunk aesthetic. So I was able to kind of absorb and extrapolate from that what I wanted my steampunk world to look like.
Just out of interest, do you have a genre that you find yourself going back to a lot then, if it isn't steampunk?
Well, I find myself really going back to either fantasy or horror when I'm not writing steampunk. So
Okay.
I really like horror. Horror is kind of where I started with
Yeah.
everything. I mean, as well as the whole fantasy aspect. I mean, if you're a fiction writer, regardless of what genre you read, you're probably going to be exposed to some fantasy out there. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
inevitable. But yeah, with horror too. I mean, that's really where I started, and it was actually reading The Gunslinger by Stephen King when I was about 14 years old that the two kind of merged together for me, and I was like, okay, that's really cool, and I would love to do something similar.
Yeah.
So
I had
it's
a good time reading the first 3 or 4 books of the Dark Tower series. Maybe it was just 3. Um, and because the Gunslinger's in that, isn't it? I think is the first one that's called the Gunslinger.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah. And those books just rock, don't they? They're just so much fun. They're so
Hmm.
textured. Like, oh, what a lovely place to get your love of the genre from. That's really cool.
This
I don't,
feels like a perfect time to ask, Ben. So I'm going to. What's the best book you've ever read, Andrew?
That would be The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield.
What what gives it the crown?
Well, it is a really haunting kind of examination of, family and a traumatic past, as well as like how that shapes a person. And it's like this, I want to call it gothic romance, but it more focuses on the relationship between sisters
Mm-hmm.
instead of it being a romantic relationship,
Yeah.
and just how that can affect a person in their development. And it was incredibly haunting. It was just beautifully written. And the actual ending of the book, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but totally gut wrenching. It was absolutely incredible. I mean, the whole book is just this adventure in this really sort of dark, traumatic past that really kind of, well, it shows you how hope and caring for someone can sort of come from that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really really just a great examination of those themes.
Now, is this one that you read the once and it had a huge impression on you, or is it a revisitor? Is it one that you go back to?
I have not actually revisited it yet. I do intend to, but I've read it the once about 4 years ago now,
Yeah.
and it has haunted me since.
Oh wow.
So it's really an incredible book.
are you a rereader typically? Do you
Oh
have
yeah,
books that you
absolutely,
go back to?
absolutely.
You have regulars you cycle through, or is it
Oh
just?
yeah. The
I've got to have your hit list. Who's up there?
well, the Night Watch series by Sergio Lukianenko or Sergei Lukyanenko, sorry. The Russian novelist. I love those. I've read those probably 6 times now.
I think that these are the ones that the movies are based on, aren't they?
Yes, that's correct.
So
Yep.
I've seen the movies, but I haven't read the books yet. But I've
Oh,
heard
the book series is phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing.
I'm afraid I'm the same.
I've heard good things, and the way that they treat the world works is really fun.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's great. And then Terry Pratchett is high on that list too. I reread a lot of his stuff, quite a bit actually.
You are among friends.
Yeah,
Excellent.
we've had a lot of Pratchetteers. I'm coining a term.
Yeah, I assume it's just people with good taste.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
So just behind the scenes a little bit, we're recording this on the 27th of May, and a couple of days ago, Nico and I celebrated the glorious 25th of May, which is the day of the revolution in Nightwatch from the Terry Pratchett book.
Yes.
So that's how into it we are.
You'd be amazed what bits the angels get to rise up by the end of that song.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I went out hunting some lilac.
Nice.
I'm gonna have to start growing it. I think I could never find it.
And actually, my wife, who introduced me to Terry Pratchett, posted on her Facebook just the other day. It's a picture of a sword and a piece of lilac, and it says at the top, "How do they rise up?"
How do they rise up?
And at the bottom,
yeah.
it's May 25th.
Yeah.
She posted that just yesterday. So, yeah.
Right, you go away. Get her on. Where is she?
What's the line? The problem with revolutions is they always come around again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. That book. Yeah, that was an incredible book.
Definitely.
Particularly. So
we've spoken about books that really do it for you and why. But what's your biggest literary turnoff? What do you if you encounter it in a bit of fiction, short story, flash fiction, long form novel? Like, do you just have to put the book down? Like, is there anything like that?
Well, for me, it usually requires at least 1 or 2 transgressions into my biggest turnoff to get me to put the book down. But what really, really bothers me actually is writing that's quote unquote by the book.
Okay.
It's like you'll see these authors that you can clearly tell they're following a specific set of rules.
Yeah.
When they're writing. And don't get me wrong, rules are well and good. They have their place. But you can really tell when an author is just following that rule book instead of putting their own heart and their own voice into that work. And it just really bugs me when I see that.
So are we talking about sort of sentence structure, or are we talking about like narrative devices? Like, for example, something like I know that the author Bernard Cornwell, who writes a lot of historical fiction, every chapter ends on a short, simple sentence that's a cliffhanger. Every chapter. Would that be...
that kind of thing. That kind of thing gets me.
That would get
as well as it's actually a little from column A, a little from column B, because you'll see I'll start reading a book and all of a sudden I'll notice that literally every descriptive paragraph includes all 5 senses.
Right.
Like they tell you to do in the rule book. It's like every descriptive sentence does this, and I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I'm done. I can't do it.
I haven't read the rule book, and I'm really glad right now.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to.
I feel like we should write a rule book that's a complete tongue-in-cheek piss take of this shit.
Oh my god, let's do it.
I've actually considered starting a YouTube channel, just blowing apart the rule book, because I am so sick of hearing it. See, the writing community on Twitter right now. Now the writing community is great. I love these people to death. I support them in every endeavor. But there are a lot of so-called experts, and where I'm seeing a lot of this rule book stuff shows up there. And it's like, yeah, you've read the books. Yeah, you're gonna tell me show don't tell, which don't even get me started on that one. But really, I mean, all you're doing is basically regurgitating these maxims and silly slogans instead of actually helping people along in their writing, and that just does a disservice to everybody.
Sounds like you're describing almost gatekeeping.
Yes, actually, yes. Gatekeeping is one of the things that in the writing industry right now I am so against.
So when are we guesting on your upcoming YouTube channel then?
Yeah,
I feel it. I feel this coming.
I'll let you guys know. I'll definitely let you guys know.
Spot on. Well, let's twist it back over to the positive when you're ready.
Let's do the posies. I don't know. Are
What?
we keeping that? We keeping the posies?
Posies.
Let's do the
like
posies, guys.
Oh,
Okay.
Incoming merch with do the posies.
It's a dance move. It involves flipping your knees the wrong way round. Walking like a dog. Right. What is going on? Who is your favourite fictional character, Andrew?
Oh, hands down, Sam Vimes.
Yes! Another one for Team
Yes.
Vimes.
Oh.
Yeah, hands down. I aspire to that level of cynicism. I mean, that dude is so amazing. I mean, he arrested an entire army. Who does that?
Sam Vimes. Yes. I mean, I have I think I mentioned it on an earlier episode, but Nico and I have a friend that has just started Discworld, and I've never been more envious.
Oh, yeah.
Do it again.
Discover, yeah, just to do it all again for the first time, and especially like because I started reading these books when I was a child, basically, and that feeling when you come back to something as an adult and read it again and get the other 70% of the jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just such a good feeling, and to get it all in one like holistic moment must be quite special. But of course, I insisted that he did not start with The Color of Magic, and instead began with Guards.
See, yeah, I started with Guards too. That was definitely the way to go.
Mort was my first one, and I probably would have had a better time with Guards. Although I do like.
Yeah, Mort's a good one.
I think Mort's as good a place to start. It's just I think you just want to stay away from the runaway wizard first.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of Rincewind.
I
altogether.
don't mind, like I actually do like Rincewind, but only on the circle back around.
I mean, he plays an excellent audience analog with as ignorant and kind of dumb as he is, but at the same time, it's like I don't know. I tried The Color of Magic. I made it like 2-3 pages in, and I'm like, I think I'm going to read something else.
Yeah, so many people about The Color of Magic. It's and they're locking themselves away from like 30 to I can't even remember how many. They're like 38 Discworld books. There's bloody loads
around there.
Yeah, it's a lot of books.
It's a lot of books. Yeah,
we basically have a whole shelf dedicated to Pratchett.
So cynicism is what attracts you to Vimes.
Oh yeah.
So how do you deal with the more sort of like hopeful tone of the later work of Pratchett?
Oh, I really love that too. He's got a way of showing you, innocence and tenderness in the same way that he's able to show you the harsh reality of stuff. And yeah, it's incredible what that guy could do.
I think the big turn in Vimes' arc from, I guess spoilers, from young Sam being born.
Mm-hmm.
Is
absolutely.
One of the best bits of character development, especially once you hit Thud.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's not just about, I want to be a good dad. It's that Sam Vimes level of unwilling to stop, channeled into fatherdom. I mean, they stopped the city to get him home for story time. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that was absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, seeing Vimes and his tenacity actually overcoming his cynicism was really a fantastic character move.
Oh, I'm so happy that you said Vimes, man. I think we could almost put a 10-minute section into the end of every episode where we just Nico and I talk about Pratchett for a bit. But alas, we should move on. This one is quite fun. I like this question, and it's if you could adapt any book into another medium, and it can be anything, what would it be, and to which medium, and why?
Actually, once again, I have to go back to Sergei Lukyanenko's Night Watch series. I know it's been adapted into film, and those movies are great, and they're really an excellent representation of what you find in the books. But I do feel that, I mean, you can get so much more out of that. There are so many different stories that are told in the books, both through the eyes of the main character and through the eyes of the other characters, that I do feel like there's potential for a lot more than we could get out of 90-minute, 2-hour film. So yeah, I do feel like that would be the thing to adapt.
And you'd go into a TV show.
Oh yeah, TV.
It does seem to be the way for a lot of people now, doesn't it? When we're discussing this in the podcast,
Yeah.
Film doesn't quite have the scope unless you're Disney and you can make a film series that is essentially a long form TV series anyway with something like the MCU.
Exactly, yeah.
This idea of doing I think it almost shows that in particular Western movies have become a little bit lazy.
Yeah.
In the way they tell a story, and it's starting to seem
they
a bit reductive.
Really have.
Yeah, it's starting to seem a bit reductive in the way that they tell stories. That everyone's like, you should read the book because it's just better. Like, it is possible for a movie to be better than its source material. For example, Starship Troopers,
Fight Club,
yeah. And because you can't, you have to show everything in a movie, because you've got the people literally moving around in scenes. There's the potential to get such another dimension to a story that, I think we've now just, most of the storytelling that gets done, in particular from Hollywood, is quite lazy. And it's especially when they're adapting something, it's just like you're seeing walking half-formed facsimiles of characters rather than actually seeing someone breathe the life into a character.
Well, that's a good comparison. Yeah, it's like you're seeing cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, for sure.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm actually at heart am a screenwriter.
Oh, right.
And the whole reason that I switched over to writing books instead was because the whole Hollywood machine has gone from storytelling to spectacle.
Okay.
It's like we don't really care in Western film about telling a good story anymore. We just want the big flashing lights and the explosions. And a lot of that blame I place on the audience, because I mean, an audience should have higher standards in my opinion. And 2, the MCU. Because I mean, you've created this series of films that tries to shoehorn in as much fan service as possible and have as many, flashing lights and explosions. But as you go through each film and as that whole series sort of develops, you see less story and more spectacle. And that's sort of the direction that film has gone. And I sort of compare it to the time during ancient Rome when they would give people the Colosseum fights to sort of keep them occupied. And
bread and circuses.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a fairly damning indictment of the state of Western cinema, but I can't really argue too strongly against it, unfortunately. I guess the only thing I would say is that, I think there is a space for some consumable media, in this instance, film, to just be fun, just be spectacle. Because I know that I have enjoyed quite several of the Marvel movies. Precisely because that, and if you just want to sit in a dark room with a couple of hundred other people and see explosions and buildings falling over and Iron Man kick the shit out of somebody. That, there's a space for it, and I don't know whether that's just me looking with sort of rose-tinted goggles back at a time when we could actually go to the cinema, but I do kind of miss it a bit.
And I do concede that point. I mean, I do agree that we do need those sort of films. It's basically like having cake and ice cream versus a balanced meal every single day, But at the same time,
you gotta have a cheat day.
it's exactly. But at the same time, it's just overwhelming how saturated the industry has become with that spectacle. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with spectacle. I just feel that the balance is off.
Yeah, it's not everything has to be worthy, but it'd be fucking great if something was.
Exactly.
Oh, now I'm sad about films.
I've
been doing this episode, guys.
I've been disenchanted by the film industry for quite a while now, so yeah.
I'm gonna warn you to not watch Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead on Netflix.
Oh my god, it's dog shit.
I've already written that. I've already written that off. I mean, automatically you have a problem there with just the stakes, I mean, it's like, okay, we're going to go risk our lives in a zombie apocalypse for money. It's like, okay, first of all, in a zombie apocalypse, money is probably worthless by now. Second of all, you are risking your lives in a zombie-filled Las Vegas for money. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, so the movie itself is nearly 3 hours long, which is an insane length for an action movie.
Oh no!
An action movie should max be between an hour and a half and maybe an hour and 45.
The fucking caveat that if it wasn't a Zack Snyder movie, it would have an 80-minute runtime. If you played it at normal speed, it wouldn't be that long.
Yeah.
Sort of like 300. If you speed up to a normal frame rate, all the different slow motion action pieces, the movie would be like 15 minutes. Yeah.
So the whole way through, I was just thinking, if Zack Snyder isn't making it fun to witness his spectacle, because that's all he's got really, isn't it? As a director, that's his brand. 300 is ridiculous, over the top Greek hoplite bonanza, isn't it? That's just what it is. And this movie wasn't fun. Not only was it did it have zero depth, bad writing, bad characterization, bad acting, the whole lot. It also just wasn't fun. It didn't achieve that spectacle. And
man,
it's just no idea.
Talking about being disenfranchised by Hollywood, I keep seeing all these clearly sponsored reviews talking about how it's amazing and isn't it incredible how they did this and this, and no, we've had CGI for fucking ages now. I expect it. It's not new. Fuck off with that. Zombies they're kind of done.
Yeah, they are.
I think really Zombieland was the last time someone did something and I went, oh, that's kind of fun. And then someone else pointed out that it's just Shaun of the Dead on the other side of the pond. And I went, oh, yeah.
I don't mind that. Zombie as a genre probably isn't done. People are fantastic. They're great at telling stories. And I'm sure some clever people could tell a very good zombie story. The produced by, written by, directed by, director of photography, Army of the Dead by Zack Snyder is not that movie.
I was surprised Theo P'd it, to be honest.
God knows, man. We need to move on because I could vent spleen about that movie for about 2 hours.
Well, I feel some bonus content. Okay. That was the last time we all hated a movie recently, but
fair.
I know you can be made to cry. It's already happened this episode.
Yeah.
But do you cry reading? And if so, when did that hit you last?
Well, besides when we heard Nico's story, The Shepherd's Crown.
Oh, yeah.
Terry Pratchett's final book.
So, don't ask me, Ben.
Yeah, so there's a sticky point here. So obviously we're both Nico and I are very big Pratchett fans, but he's actually found himself unable to read that book yet.
Really?
Because he actually can't deal with it ending.
I can't end Discworld.
Yeah, that was hard. It was really hard.
I've done the others multiple times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if once it's over, it's over.
So we had a deal that he would come and visit me, and basically I'd sort of sit with him whilst he read it.
That's a good idea.
But then the pandemic happened,
Yeah.
so we've had limited amount of opportunities to do that. So it will be coming soon. But I can totally understand why that would be a tearjerker for sure.
Uh-huh. I actually needed some support while I was reading it too. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And you're making the right choice there with having somebody around when you're reading it.
I mean, we have cried about Terry Pratchett together on multiple occasions.
Oh yes.
I really clearly remember when I found out that he'd passed away. I was working in Games Workshop at the time, and when you're at that time king of the nerds, is not when you want to be breaking down in tears in the middle of your workday in front of a bunch of people who see you as just a purveyor of plastic crack. But I got texted, and it may even have been Ben telling me it had happened, and I thought no, it can't be. And I held it in for a while, and someone really quickly put out this post on Facebook where they'd written "Death coming to get Terry," and it devastated me.
That went all over Twitter, all over social media. That it was a very intense bit. Whoever did that is did the man a service, I think.
No, the cancer. No, the other one. Oh.
Yeah, and Pratchett's death was actually the first author death, and well, actually the first celebrity death overall that really affected me. I mean, up until then, people were kind of just celebrities were just these nebulous forms that were inaccessible. But I mean, Terry Pratchett put so much of himself and so much honesty into his work that, I mean, it felt like, it really felt like losing something special. And I remember I was actually working that day too at my silly telemarketing job, and I saw it was a Google News article, and I just read that headline, Terry Pratchett dead at, whatever, and I was numb the rest of the day. I mean, just something in me cracked, and I came home and I had to break the news to my wife. She was working. She works nights, so I'd come home, she'd wake up, and I had to break the news to her, and we both had a pretty good sob session when we found out. So,
out of interest, because you're in the States, which means you've actually had it on TV now, did you watch The Watch?
I avoided it, actually.
Cool.
Because I read the reviews. I read about some of the changes that they made, and I read about that absolute sod of a director who was like, I wrote The Watch, and it's like, no, sir, you definitely did not.
you mutilated a corpse.
Exactly what he did.
I made it through 12 minutes, and they kept just throwing out references to Discworld. Like obscure stuff, like really, but without saying what anything was, really. And I just became very confused.
The Tony approach to storytelling.
Yeah, just Discworld fans will like it, because like you were saying about it's just spectacle and then fan service.
And
but
shoehorning the fan
servicing the fans. Well, when I'm serviced, I don't want them to bite down as hard as possible. That's
It's more a look at me, I've read Terry Pratchett sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't fucking like it, so here's my version.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, to just really set the scene, it opens with the reveal that Carcer and Vimes were childhood friends in the same gang.
Oh god, that's such a waste of everyone's time.
What?
Yep.
Done. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and then in that flashback, Carcer immediately kills John Keel, who does not look even remotely like Vimes. Smashed
no.
up to
Wow.
a different man to any man that... Because even drunk Vimes wasn't a degenerate.
No.
Which is what this character immediately... Like, there's a running gag where a dog keeps pissing on him, which I guess might be Gaspode as a reference. I'm not sure. So he just keeps trying to piss on this dog, but he's not quick enough at getting his cock out.
What?
Yeah.
And this all happens in
God, the
12
more I
minutes.
hear about this, the worse
so
it fucking gets.
It starts... I mean, I'm going in now. From
I feel like we need to stop venting spleen about movies and TV shows we don't like. Right. So I will have to watch that 12 minutes, and we'll have to chat about it.
We'll do it together.
We'll hold hands. So we.
I am so glad I stayed away from that.
We've talked quite a lot about loads about Terry Pratchett, which is awesome, and also like what your likes and dislikes are inside, fiction and storytelling. But what is your actual process when it comes down to writing your novels? Because you currently have 2 books out. You have The Six Gun Sorcery and A Fistful of Royals, both from the Sins of the Elders. And it's a 2-book series, correct? So that's actually a completed series under your belt.
Oh, actually, no. There's going to be more.
Oh, wicked! Oh, that's cool.
Yep, it just shows us book 2 out of 2 on Amazon because of Amazon. So
yeah, we've encountered those problems. So your process?
My process: coffee and self-loathing.
Coffee and self-loathing.
No, I'm playing.
Is that just a scattergun approach, or specifically for when you write?
Oh, actually, it's the scattergun approach, but no, really, it's for me. I put a lot of focus on character because when you talk to somebody about media in general, not just books, but media in general, the first thing they're going to tell you about is who their favorite character is and what those characters are doing and how they react to situations.
I mean, I know you're joking when you say you apply it just to everything, but is it like you think, I'm going to write a book today, here's my coffee, quick look in the mirror, I fucking hate you, and you go? Or like, how do you run up to that?
Oh, actually, it's just kind of a constant. I'm drinking my coffee, thinking to myself, yeah,
you're gonna drown.
This is horrible. Everything sucks. Existential dread. Oh, wait, here's a book idea. And actually, it's come to my attention that the worse my personal life gets, the more and better I write, because it's so escapist for me.
Oh wow!
Do you find yourself self-sabotaging in your personal life in order to write better?
I hope not. I really haven't examined it yet, so thank you for that. But
it literally the first thing that came to my mind when you said that, just because I'm always looking for the exploit in the game,
Darling, I've got a chapter to finish and I've got nothing. So if I do at any point today say I love you, just don't say anything back. That would really help.
If I use a different name for you, just definitely don't roll with it. Just call me on my shit.
So actually, that might work.
Yeah, go for it. I apologize to your wife. Sorry.
I'm sure she'll be listening to this later, and I'll be like, "Okay, so here's the thing," and then I'll do some writing.
From England told me to do something very strange, and I'm intending to do it. So when you actually come down to the sort of meat and potatoes of actually writing the writing the words on the page. You mentioned earlier that this idea of like playing by a rule book,
Yes.
and like prescriptive writing is just not your jam at all. So how do you find yourself like, is it difficult to keep your writing fresh, or is it just something that you do adhere to some rules, but how does it work for you?
Well, the way it comes down to me and the rules is, I very much feel like you have to know the rules in order to bend them or break them.
Sure.
And one thing that's been pointed out in both Six Gun and Fistful so far is how I'm, generally trope busting with some of the things that I do. And a large part of it for me is just figuring out when the rules actually apply and when they don't. And that also can be a hard balance, and I'm really glad that I have editors for that. But yeah, when it comes down to rules, it's basically just knowing when they can be bent, when they can be broken, sort of like the Matrix.
I like that. It sounds, so obviously you mentioned self-loathing earlier. It sounds like you've got an almost bulletproof confidence in your writing ability, which is wicked. It's a really, it's a really strong thing to cultivate, because I know that if I was sitting down thinking I need to have mastered this in order to even begin writing, that would really trip me up. Are you fairly harsh with yourself on the first draft, or is there a lot of drafting happening?
Actually, my writing is probably the place where I'm the least hard on myself in life, if I'm to tell you the truth. I've been writing since I was about 6 years old. So I've spent a good, 33 odd years just working toward what I'm doing now, and basically just learning everything there is to know about storytelling, everything I can about the craft, the narrative, different rules, and things like that. And I've actually spent quite a long time on it, and that's why I've managed to sound so confident and so bulletproof as far as the whole process goes, because I've just spent a lot of time. I mean, I've devoted an entire lifetime to this. But that's not to say that I feel like I'm an expert, because I don't believe that anyone can be an expert as far as the arts are concerned. Now, it's not necessarily like I'm not being denigrating toward people. I'm just saying that there's so much to know and there's so much to explore in the arts that basically that discovery process is never ending.
I really like that.
Yeah, it's a very almost Zen outlook, I think. This very controlled but humble approach.
Yeah, and the best way I can put that into a nutshell is you guys ever watch Doctor Who?
Yeah.
Well, that episode where that episode The Lodger, where the Doctor has to stay with James Corden's character and basically try to live a normal life.
This might have been after I stopped watching, I think.
Maybe the same for me.
Yeah. But go on, sorry. I understand the concept.
Well, at one point he's introducing himself, and the advert that he was reading for the apartment was looking for a young professional, and he says, "I'm less young professional and more ancient amateur." And I feel that ancient amateur kind of applies to artists that have a certain level of experience, because it shows us that we've been at it for a long time, but at the same time we're by no means experts in the field, because really there is no gaining a level of expertise.
I really like that. Ancient amateur. Something that we can only aspire to, Nico.
I mean, I'm pushing ancient. We'll get there. It's coming. Right.
I'm turning 40 next week, so yeah, I'm about there.
Good God. I'll have to delete this immediately. So, I love this question. It's the sequel to another question I loved, but it went so well with young Shiv last time that I've got to ask you, what is your favourite fact? It can be about anything.
My favorite fact is that the Roman basilica is neither Roman nor a basilica.
Ooh.
That's quite spicy.
I actually got that from a Mike Myers sketch on Saturday Night Live. He played this older lady who had a thick New York accent. The segment was called Coffee Talk. And at the end of each segment, the character would be like, she'd give some random fact and be like, discuss. And that the Roman basilica is neither Roman nor a basilica was one of those. And I was just like, wait a minute, really? So I actually looked into it, and it's true.
How does one qualify for basilica status?
Well, there are certain architectural criteria that are required to be considered a basilica. It's something in the it's been a long time since I looked at it, but it's something in the way of that the structures doorways work. They have to be a certain type of archway or something along those lines. And something about the domes too is off. So it's not technically a basilica, and two, it's of a Greek design and not a Roman one. So it's actually more of a Greek a Greek shrine chapel, something along those lines, rather than actually being a Roman basilica.
It sounds a little bit like this SNL sketch. It sort of got the cadence from the Voltaire quote. What's the Voltaire quote about the Holy Roman Empire? It's neither Holy Roman nor an empire.
It could very well be, but yeah, Voltaire
I
once again nailed it with that.
I really like these turns of phrase that are actually pretty spot on.
I'm not going to say we're operating on different levels, Ben, but I was reminded of the one, why am I a guinea pig? I'm neither Italian nor pork.
And we're going to have to qualify that Nico does have some Italian heritage and therefore can possibly just about get away with that joke.
Just about. Sorry, Nonna. Oh, I can feel her Catholic stare on the back of my head.
Uh-huh. You know, I was raised Catholic. I know that stare you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. My grandmother used to give it to me all the time too.
I was raised with almost no religion at all, so I'm actually not entirely sure where I got all my guilt from, but it's there.
From your crimes.
Oh wow. Maybe you had Catholic ancestors. I think it's congenital.
Yeah. Like syphilis. So, Andrew, you've got. We mentioned that you've got 2 books out at the moment, and it sounds like there's some more in the pipeline. What are the things that people who've, we've already sampled your writing today, which was great, and learned a bit about you. But if people want to read your stuff, what should they go and read?
Well, they should start with Six Gun Sorcery, obviously, the book 1 of the Sins of the Elders. Then Fistful of Royals is the continuation of that, obviously. With Six Gun, yeah, it's just this great adventure piece with a peacekeeper finding herself in the crosshairs of a shadowy cabal who's trying to save the world. And the 3rd book in the series is coming out on August the 7th. It's called Black Iron Blitz. And that'll also be available for pre-order on July 7th, a month before.
You've got some really fun book titles there.
Well, thank you.
They're definitely the kind that if when we're allowed to browse in bookshops again, which I think is kind of now, they're the kind of be like, oh shit, pick it up. Fantastic. And this is like a fantasy steampunk world.
Correct. Yeah. If I were to put a real world timeline to it, it would be taking place sometime in the late 1890s, early 1900s. There are, people running around being gunslingers, while at the same time there's also a sort of sword and sorcery thing going on. It's magic, guns that shoot magic. So, yeah, it's a pretty unique combination of
1890s.
fantasy
So,
and steampunk.
do you have does the sort of Wild West trope of the railway
Oh yeah.
feature?
Yep, you've got the railway. They ride clockwork horses. There are airships. So
that's all the good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Got all the right flavors.
Yeah, it's a delicious Sunday.
So when people want to come and question the weird things we've talked about on this podcast and tell you how enjoyable and lovely your books are, where can they find you online?
Well, to buy the books, you can find me on Amazon, obviously, just by a basic search, or you can go through the publisher's site, shadowsparkpub.com /Andrew-Slinde. I'm also on Twitter at Andrew Slinde, just my first and last name. Facebook, you can find me, facebook.com /Drew's Scribbles, and Instagram at Andrew.Slinde.
Spot on. Well, go and check Andrew out. You've been a fantastic guest. Really enjoyed talking to you and finding another Pratchett Discworld head.
Oh yeah,
the turtle moves, and yeah, fantastic stuff. I hope we hope to speak to you again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love it. Yeah, great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been a great discussion.
Thank you all for joining us on this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your chosen service so that you don't miss out on future episodes.
You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, where you can talk to us directly and even suggest prompts for upcoming stories.
If you're not a tweeter, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Just search for The Tiny Bookcase.
Now, if you want to support the podcast,
and we'd really appreciate it if you did,
you can do so at patreon.com /The Tiny Bookcase.
And then you could be just as special as these story seekers.
Do we thank them?
I think so.
Well, then it's a huge thank you to the legendary Matthew McLaren and the absolutely epic Scott Byrne for their support.
Thanks for listening. Catch you next week.
Make it slimy.
Make it slimy, Nick.